All right. Hello, everyone. I'm HaraLove. Nice to meet you if I haven't already. I think some of you I've met in person and others I've just connected with online, and others are completely new to the HaraLove experience. So welcome to all of you. We have two amazing classes tonight, Twerk4Health and Lap Dance for Lovers, both of which are part of my sacred, holistic, empowered process, which I call Orgasmic Health. And Orgasmic Health is a way of really getting into our bodies, releasing blockages, cultivating energy, waking up our innate powers, our Shakti powers, so that we can draw down our spirit, so that we can be fully embodied, so that we can enjoy living with play and pleasure, and use practices that include play and pleasure to really deeply heal, to heal our nervous system, to heal our muscular system, to align our body, mind, and spirit, so that we can magnetize, that we can call in the life of our dreams. And so today, with these classes, we're going to be focusing more on the body side of things, but we will also integrate the sacred aspect and the empowerment aspect in order to really feel good about what we're doing. When dealing with sexuality, sometimes it can be a little bit of a tricky subject. Especially if we're feeling disconnected with our sensuality and our sexuality and our orgasmic self. Sometimes it can seem like quite a bit of a stretch. So today I'm just going to break it down in ways that really demonstrate that we can use our body and use pleasure to start feeling better about connecting with our sexuality, and that we can connect with our sensuality without having to go to a sexual place as well. So whether you're single or partnered, you can use these practices to bring more pleasure into your life, to get more deeply into your body. And then if you do have a partner, you can use the Lap Dance for Lovers practices. You can use them on your own, of course, but you can use them with your partner to create a deeper sense of connection and pleasure and intimacy, and treat it as a kind of ongoing foreplay that you can use throughout the day, throughout your time together, to just quickly jump in and connect, or to take a longer period of time if you want to get into a more sensual and sexual place. I think that is most of what I wanted to say for the introduction. Specifically, Twerk4Health, I do want to say, if you have any structural issues, especially in your back, you want to be really careful. Just noticed I spilled water on myself. If you have an acute spasm, a muscle that's really tight and bothering you, you just want to take it easy. I will demonstrate how to do practices that are gentle and can actually support moving through spasm or chronic pain. And that's a big part of the orgasmic health process, is actually using pleasurable movements and self-touch and shared touch to break through chronic pain issues and other chronic issues that we may experience. Definitely also great for menstrual support, fertility, urinary issues, because we're going to be constantly and continuously through the class pumping deeply nourishing fresh blood into our pelvis. We're going to be awakening the nervous system, the nerve plexus in our sacrum and our pelvis. And we're going to also connect that sacral plexus with our heart plexus. So our sacral and root chakras will be connected with our solar and heart chakras. And we'll do a little bit of vocal toning and throat work as well to connect all the way up to our heart. We'll be talking about how to use intuitive movement, so connecting it to our third eye. And we'll be connecting it to our crown when we can really visualize the energy that we're moving flowing through us. And we'll talk about how to do that when we get to that section in the class. So just know that this is not only a class for our physical bodies and for awakening pleasure, but a class to really help us get in touch with our energetic bodies and our spiritual selves, which really, I think our spirit tends to be the most playful of all when we really can get it into our bodies. Most spirits, most souls really love to play. And that's why we're here on earth, for it to be our playground. So it can be a playful, pleasurable experience. And we just need to know the tricks to help get us there. So that's what we're going to learn today. So I wanted to start with an invocation. And an invocation is a calling in. So we're going to call in what we're desiring with this class. And in essence, we're calling the goddess into ourselves. We're calling different aspects of the goddess. One will be Goddess Venus for her self-honoring. One will be Goddess Earth for her deep nourishing. One will be the medicine goddess for her clearing and strengthening. And then we'll also connect to something called divine orgasmic flow. And that is the masculine energy that runs through the universe. And it impregnates the earth. It runs through us and goes down into the earth, down and around in a shape that's called a toroid. And we also have our own individual toroids. They're called our auras. And they're essentially energy vortexes that run up our body, out, down, and around, and back up to our root. We can also channel them the other way, but that's a specific type of exercise, a specific practice that we're not going to get into today. So we'll be talking about channeling the goddess and creating this nice vortex of deep healing energy. So we're going to invoke Goddess Earth, Goddess Venus, and the medicine goddess to come to us today. You can invoke any other goddess energy or archetypal energy or spirit guides that you want to have with you for support. You can call in the 4 directions and all of the elements, north, east, west, south, air, earth, water, fire, and wood, to support us in our flexibility, our strength, our fluidity, our movement, and our passion. May we constantly and continuously channel these elements and these archetypes for their strength and their nourishment and their support. May it be so. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is something called primal movements. I'm just going to make sure my volume's up here. So primal movements are movements that we have experienced since we were a fetus. So we began experiencing them when we were still in the womb. And one of the main primal movements that I use is shaking. And we see shaking in animals that have been chased by a predator. And when they stop, they tremor or shake it off. And it is deeply resetting to the nervous system. In humans, we can use it to reset our nervous system, and we can also use it to activate our nervous system if we use it long enough. When we use it, we can move our spine back and forth to release tension in the little tiny muscles that run along the spine, where our nerves come out and run to all aspects of our body. So we can work the whole body just by doing a really gentle shaking movement. And I'm going to stand up so you can see. You can do shaking standing, seated, or lying down. But essentially, you're just going to begin shifting your hips side to side. And as you work with shaking, you can move the focal point where you're initiating the movement from to different areas of your body. You can focus on your heart, you can focus on your chest, you can focus down in your legs, but for now, because we're doing a twerking class, we're going to focus on the hips. And this is typically where I will initiate. So I'm letting everything be loose. I'm just letting it jiggle back and forth. I'm letting that energy move up my spine in a wave. My belly's loose, my booty's loose, my knees are slightly bent, my feet are nice and flat on the floor, the 4 corners, 2 up by my toes, and 2 sides of the heel are nice and even. And I'm just jiggling back and forth, letting that wave move up my spine. You can move up to your chest a little bit. Let the movement come from your shoulders. We're going to be doing a little bit of chest work. We'll go a little bit into connecting the heart and the womb for a deeper level of pleasure, but I think we'll get into that more in a separate class. So we're just shaking side to side, letting that motion activate the side walls of our pelvis and our womb and our heart and all of our other internal organs. We can also do bouncing. So side to side gets the side walls, bouncing gets the top and bottom, and bouncing is really great for the diaphragms of our body. We often hear about the diaphragm below our lungs, but we also have a pelvic diaphragm. We have a diaphragm up in our neck. And so anytime we're bouncing, we are resetting those diaphragms. So we can release deep tension with just a very subtle movement. When we bounce up and down and activate our heart, we can also do a little bit of tapping. And that just activates from the outside in. So we're getting inside out and outside in. Remembering to breathe nice and deep. When you breathe in, let your belly expand a little bit. And as you exhale, draw in. As you exhale, you can also draw in like a purse string up through your pelvic floor, all the way up to your crown. If you can't feel it, just envision it. And as we inhale, we can release it, letting things drop, and exhale, drawing up. Inhale, releasing, creating space for the belly to expand and the lungs to drop down. And exhale, drawing up. Can begin to use our arms. Inhale, releasing, and exhale, drawing up. Draw it up to the top. So we're just beginning to do a gentle pelvic floor contraction as we exhale. Exhale, drawing up. We're going to begin to add in a flexion and extension. And these are really common movements in yoga. So, like a cat-cow would be a flexion when you're going forward, an extension when you're arching back. We're going to do the same thing while we're standing and using our breath. So as we inhale, we're releasing, arching back just a little bit. And as we exhale, we're drawing up and contracting in just a little bit, really pulling that energy up, squeezing it up like a tube of toothpaste. Inhale, releasing, extending, open, arching it back just slightly, and exhale, folding forward, rounding forward just a little bit, and drawing up that pelvic purse string to the top of the crown. A couple more of these. So this is a Qigong exercise that you can do anytime. And it just helps to release tension all throughout the body, especially when you combine it with just a little bit of primal movement. Another primal movement that we can talk about briefly is rocking. And that's actually something that we're going to do quite a bit of today with twerking. So rocking is a back and forth motion. And it can be either, we can either rock from our feet. So I'm rocking heels, toes, back and forth. We can rock from our hip bones, which would be back and forth like this. We're going to be focusing on the rocking from the hip bones today because that is a twerking movement, but we're going to break it down pretty deeply. So we're not going to do too much of that right now. We'll do a little bit as a warm-up. When we tilt forward, you're going to imagine that you have a bowl on your pelvis, that your pelvis is a bowl. And when it's neutral, the sides of the bowl are all even. So here's the top of the bowl in the front and the top of the bowl in the back. And our feet are nice and flat, our knees are slightly bent. You can drop your tailbone down just a little bit. You're not pulling down too hard, you're not contracting your muscles. Slightly engaged just through the core. So the belly, the sides, and the back are all lightly engaged, just to make sure that those hip bones are nice and level. Once they're nice and level, and you can see if they are by looking in a mirror or just feeling, okay, do I feel crunched up? Do I feel contracted in my low back? Good. Do I feel like I'm really tight in my belly? Can I release that? Good. And just play around with that. So when you do feel like everything's nice and level, then we'll start doing a more exaggerated tilt and release. So we're going to go forward first. So when we go forward, we're contracting the lower belly and lifting up, right? So this is an exercise in itself. It's basically like a standing crunch for the lower belly. We're not bringing our upper body into it. We're keeping it in the pelvis. Contract those lower abs. Now, if you have a hard time with this, if you're postpartum or just really haven't done a lot of ab work lately, you want to take it nice and slow. If you have any low back injuries, you also want to take it slow, but it can be great to strengthen the abs to support the low back, because when we're able to utilize all of our muscles around our girdle area, we tend to be a lot stronger in our core, even though we're not necessarily doing deep core work right now. Just strengthening the superficial muscles around here can be really beneficial because it just gives another layer of support. Then when we do start working more on our core, we already have the superficial support and we're less likely to get injured. So we're just going to do that a little more, tilting forward. When we tilt forward, we're contracting our belly, and just a very light contraction of the booty. Most of the contraction is in the belly at this point. Our low back is not engaging at all right now. And then when we drop, we're just releasing back to neutral. We're not going forward and back at this point. We're going to do that in the future. Right now, we're just focusing on front and back. I'm just going to double check here. See if, okay, good. So this is a great exercise to practice throughout the day, just lifting and dropping, because you're going to get a gentle toning of the belly. You can do it while you're washing dishes. You can do it seated while you're working on a computer, because it's just a gentle contraction and release. You can do it laying down in bed. You can practice it while you're having sex, for that matter. So there's a lot that you can do with it. Yeah. So we're just contracting and releasing. And just, if you're just starting out, we're just going to do it for a minute or two at a time. And try and initiate most of the movement from your belly. We're not swinging our hips forward. We will be doing that at some point, but for now, it's just a very controlled contract and release. Now, it's important to be able to understand how to contract and release our muscles effectively, especially in the pelvis, because an orgasm is essentially just a contraction and release of muscle tissue. Now, it's a specialized contraction and release, and it activates specialized nerves, basically nerves that receive pleasure signals. And when we use those nerves regularly, they're stronger and more active, and we'll be able to feel more pleasure. So this is just a way to incorporate pleasure-building exercise throughout the day, as well as releasing deep tension. So when we are letting our low back go, these muscles in our low back tend to hold a lot of tension, especially if we walk with kind of an arched low back, which a lot of us do just because of our posture. So when we can consciously learn to let them go, let them release, they are more likely to be healthy. When our muscles are able to release fully, they're also able to contract fully. And when we're able to contract and release over and over again in a rhythmic pattern, that initiates an orgasmic response. So ideally, with orgasmic health, we want to be able to contract and release all the muscles in our body, but especially from the top of our back to our low back and in our pelvis, so that we can fully and effectively contract and release in a rhythmic fashion to initiate an orgasmic effect. If we do this in our back at any point, and we have a clear pathway down to our sacrum, we can actually initiate what's called an orgasmic cascade that will go from wherever point we start, down the back, and into the pelvis, activating our deep pleasure sensors. Ideally, it'd be great if we could do that from the upper back all the way down, because then we'll get a really strong cascade and a really strong pleasurable reaction. But I often will start that process in my low back, especially because I tend to carry a lot of tension on my right side of my low back. And that's because one of my legs is slightly shorter than the other. And that's actually a very common thing these days. I have a lot of theories about why that is, and if you want to know more, you can let me know. But if you've ever been to a chiropractor and they've given you a lift or diagnosed you with a leg length discrepancy, you're often going to have one side of your body, one side of your low back especially, that tends to have a lot more tension. And so focusing a little bit more on the low back can be really beneficial for that. So as we're tilting, we can let that low back muscle start to relax. And if it's in a lot of spasm, we might need to give it some support. So we can just get in there with our thumb and press and just remind it to let go. We can use our knuckles, we can, just anything we can to remind it that it's time to relax right now. If we have trouble engaging our low belly, we can give it a little bit of support with our hands. I have a little bit of weakness in my low belly. I had some surgery a couple years ago, and I just kind of got off track with my body temple practices. And part of the reason why I'm sharing this now is because I know that it has had such a deep healing benefit for me in the past, and I'm ready to feel that benefit again, and I'm ready to share it. So if you do have a weakness in your low belly, you can also use your hands to kind of help engage it. And you can use one hand on your low back and one hand on your belly if you like. Or you can just have your hands on your hips if you want to make sure that you're staying neutral when you release. So there's a lot of ways to play with that movement. The other way we can move is arching the low back. So we're drawing up the tailbone. In this case, we are contracting these back muscles that we were trying to keep released before, and we're keeping the booty soft. And that's when the booty's soft, when we do a strong contraction here, we start to get a nice jiggle in the booty. And that's what creates that fun shake that's so sought after in twerking. So you can play around with that. And again, if you do have some weakness in your low back, if it's been in spasm for a while, you just have some type of dysfunction, just go really soft and gentle at first and start building up, a minute or two at first, and then build up from there. So in this case, we're going to contract both sides of the low back muscle and then let it go. We're not going to go into a forward tilt yet. We're just focusing on the back tilt now. It's just a subtle tilt at first. As we warm up the muscle, we can try and go a little deeper. I'm just getting warmed up myself. I've been doing a lot of resting today because I've been dealing with some pretty deep fatigue. I did a lot of dance training this week, and so I'm recuperating. I'm just going to take it really gently for now. And this is a great chance to check in with your body and see how it's doing. Notice if there's any spasm. Notice if there's any feeling at all, or if there's a lack of feeling. Notice if you can go a little further than you could last time. Just check in and see how things are going. Right, so we're still going nice and slow. We're not popping it yet, like we will be later in class. It's just a very smooth movement. Tilting up and letting it release. Belly soft, booty soft. The only thing that contracts right now are these guys. We can also, as we're doing these movements, touch ourselves and massage ourselves. And we'll be getting a little bit more into sensual touch and playful touch in the Lap Dance for Lovers class. But for now, just anything to help wake up that area, get some blood moving, start waking up the nerves can be helpful. If you have a lot of tension in your booties, you can pound it a little bit, gently over the sacrum. You can rub up and down, back and forth. We can do some hip circles. Warming up is really important, especially for the hips. We carry, especially as women, we carry so much tension in our hips, especially if we've given birth. We might have some hip instability. We might have some, our sacroiliac joints, the joints that run along either side of our sacrum, might be unstable. I know that's been the case for me for a lot of years. So as we're doing the twerking, when we go forward and we're engaging the low belly and the glutes, we're also actually strengthening over the sacrum. And we're pumping fresh nutrients and blood through there. So, yeah. So it should feel pretty good. If it's hurting at all, just back off a little bit. Go slower, go gentler. There's no real timetable for where you should be. But just know that if you do these practices regularly, even for just a minute or two a day, you'll start seeing benefits pretty quickly. If you incorporate primal movements and breath work and things like that, you'll start seeing movements even more quickly. So remembering to engage your girdle and release it. Engage your lower belly and your glutes when you tilt forward. Release them and engage your lower back. when you're tilting backwards, and then release that. And so we can go through that whole movement, tilting, coming to neutral, and tilting back. Tilting up, neutral, and back. This is just fully tilting the pelvic bowl. Nice and slow still, engaging the belly and the glutes, releasing and engaging the low back. Over and over. And at some point you might feel like you want to start moving a little faster, and that's totally fine. You just let that wave move through. Trust your body. It's going to tell you what it can handle and what it likes and needs. So if you do feel any pain, just back off. If you're feeling nice and strong, you can push a little harder, go a little faster, pop it a little more. Okay, so we're going to come back to those movements in a minute. I want to wake up the rest of the hips a little bit before we go deeper. So we're going to work on the side of the hips and the obliques, so the side body. Just going to bring this up so you can see. Starting to get some definition. I've been doing a lot of belly dance lately, and a lot more strength training than I have been. And I had a lot of jiggle belly, which was fine. I love my belly. I've carried 3 babies, got my tiger stripes. I've had some belly surgery, so I've got a lot of memories in this belly. But I also noticed that I just wasn't having the fire and the passion and the core strength that I wanted to do the things I wanted to do with life. And so if you're there, just know that these practices, my goddess flow healing dance practices, deep unwinding, yoga flow practices, all of those will help to release tension and build core strength so that you can get back on track. So if you need support, just let me know. So we're going to start activating the side body. Side body goes all the way from the toes up to the head. And we're going to focus on the piece just around the torso. Excuse me. Get some water. So we're going to do almost like a side crunch, right? Or standing crunch. So we're drawing the hips and the ribs towards each other. And the shoulders just coming along for the ride. We're not dragging down super hard. We're just using these muscles, pulsing them just on the right side for now. Really gentle at first, especially if you're not feeling super strong, but just notice your limitations right now. Honor those limitations and see if you can push just a tiny bit into it. So I am sliding my hip to the side as I'm drawing down. You can also keep your hip stationary and draw down if you want a little more work on the top of the obliques. And that will start to create the hourglass shape here. I had a pretty straight torso just a month ago, and you'll notice that starting to form as you hit about 40, your late 30s, 40s. We start to lose that definition unless we keep up with our side body work. And that is due to a number of factors. One, just aging, things start to kind of droop a little more. So unless we're actively working on it, things just kind of start to pop out to the sides. We start to lose height. So if you want to stay long and lean with a nice curve to your belly, then you want to really focus on working these obliques and side body exercises. The left side, so just really contracting these muscles. We're not throwing ourselves, it's all in the contraction. So if you can just go a little bit, that's fine. Let's start to build strength and the ability to go a little harder, a little faster, a little longer, and it'll come pretty quickly. If you do have some severe chronic issues, a lot of excess weight, or just a lot of pain, let me know and I will work with you to break free of that so you can make progress more quickly. So we're going to alternate side to side a little bit. And these aren't traditional twerking in the sense that, we're not on our hands and knees arching our booty up in the air. These are preparatory exercises, but can also be a beautiful part of a twerking routine. So thinking about kind of like a belly dance style, but a little more geared in like hip hop kind of energy. And so after a while, when we're feeling warmed up, we can start to pop it a little more. So we're going to slide and drop, right? Chest isn't coming into it too much right now. We'll be adding that in later. So we're going to go layer by layer, making sure we're nice and warmed up, toning from a deep level. Okay, we're also going to slide side to side. So we're keeping our upper body out of it completely now and just sliding side to side. And it's really gentle at first. It's like you're flossing, separating your lower body from your upper body. And then when you're warmed up there, so this is kind of a continuation of the shaking that we were doing earlier. As we feel warmed up, we can start to pop it a little more. Our booty's nice and relaxed. Our hips are in a neutral position. You may need to drop your tailbone. You'll probably have to keep remembering to drop your tailbone. So I'm going to remind you as often as I can, because throughout the day, if we remember to drop our tailbone, it's going to really open up our pleasure centers in our sacrum. So especially if you're looking forward to some yummy sexual time with a partner or by yourself, you want to make sure to keep that sacrum open as much as you can throughout the day. So we're popping side to side. Our booty's relaxed, so we're starting to get a nice jiggle. We're more strongly waking up the sides of the womb and the yoni. You don't have to use your hands, I'm just showing you movement, but you can use your hands if you like. You'll start to feel like you're getting a little warmer. Even though we're not doing a super strong cardio routine, this really strongly generates fire or internal warmth. And if you have a lot of inflammation in your pelvis, like endometriosis, or if you have a lot of digestive inflammation, you just want to notice that. Typically, this inner fire practice kind of practices won't aggravate that. But as we clear blockages, you might actually start to find that it's better. And if you do want support with that, there's lots of things you can do, lots of herbs you can take, and nutritionally things that you can do. So just let me know. All right, now we're going to go in a circle. So we're going to go forward, tilting, side slide, tilt back, and slide to the other side. So as we tilt up, remember we're lightly engaging the low belly and the glutes. Side, we're engaging the obliques. Back, we're engaging the low back. Another side. And then we can start to smooth it out. Now don't worry about smoothing it out too fast. But when you are ready, you can imagine that there's a bowl and it's tilting in those different directions. So you want to still keep it separate if you can from your upper body. So don't go too big. We're keeping it in what's called an internal pelvic circle. So the circle is inside of our pelvis and we're just tracing it around. And then you can also do an external pelvic circle, which is a circle outside of your pelvis that you're tracing, a little bigger. But for now, let's just keep it nice and small. You can also keep it very tiny. And this actually gets really, I guess challenging would be the word, but it just activates quite strongly because to keep that small movement, you really need to contract pretty deeply. When we're doing the bigger movements, you kind of don't need to worry about contracting as much. But when we're doing the smaller movements, it's very deliberate. And this is what creates a beautiful hip circle in belly dance and in hula. So let's go the other side. And for as long as you need to, you can go slow and focus on those 4 points. And then when you feel ready, just try smoothing it out a little bit, remembering to contract and release as you go. The contract and release is really important. It's really important for health. It's really important for the playfulness and the fun in the twerk. And it's just really helps us get control of our bodies and learn how to contract and release on demand, which will help us learn how to orgasm on demand, which is one of the beautiful goals and benefits both of the orgasmic health practice and learning to work with twerking and hip energy. So we're still going in a circle here. We can also pop as we move through those 4 points. which helps us get a little bit more into that twerking energy. We can play around with spending a little more time popping in one area. So I'm just doing doubles. Pop to the back, double, pop to the side, double, pop to the front, double. There's all kinds of ways to play with this. And again, it's really just about learning to contract and release those muscles and starting to do it in a rhythmic fashion. The rhythmic fashion will benefit us not only in pumping blood flow, but we'll also start to get that nice bounce. So if we're going to pop repeatedly to the back, then we start to get that nice jiggle in the booty, as long as our booty's relaxed. And we can go a little faster. When we go a little faster, then we'll start to get that shake. So I'm bouncing a little bit too. This is where the bouncing that we did earlier comes in. So I'm letting my back contract and release pretty rapidly, and then adding a bounce. And you can do this when you're doing a bigger full tilt front and back, or you can do it just to the back, or you can do it just to the front. There's all kinds of ways to play with it. So even if you're just holding a neutral and bouncing, you tend to get a nice jiggle. Then you can start shaking side to side. So we did a slow shake earlier. Now we can do a faster shake. When we do a faster shake, sometimes it can be helpful to engage our low belly so that all of the shake is focused in the booty. And to do that, sometimes we'll need to help control it, or we can let it go and jiggle in the front too. Depends on what we want. If you want a little belly jiggle, that's great. It's actually really good for your intestines. But if we're doing more of a performance twerk or incorporating it into lap dance, or we just want to feel really sexy about our bodies, we can contract our girdle muscles, contract our low belly muscles as we shake side to side, and also contract our low back muscles as we shake side to side. That will focus the jiggle and the shake in the hips. That's where we get that nice jiggle. So you can jiggle side to side, you can bounce up and down, you can add in a twerk or not. You can do circles with a little bit more of a jiggle or a shake. So this is just a small internal circle going faster. I'll show you what it looks like from the back. So just tiny little circle, just getting kind of a shake in all directions. So there's lots of ways to play with the different movements of the hips and approaching twerking. I want to move on now for just a few minutes to the chest. One, because a lot of people tend to automatically incorporate their upper back and chest into their twerking movement, and that's not always the best way to go about it. And it's not technically really a twerk when you are doing that, although you can do it. I don't know, maybe I'll reevaluate that, but you know, if you're focusing on your hips, it's definitely a different twerk than if you are doing a full back arch. And this can be nice, but it can also be a lot for your body to do all the time. The low back muscles, these nice thick chunky muscles in our low back, are a lot stronger and less easily stressed than our little muscles in our upper back. Our upper back muscles tend to be very thin, and so overusing them can just start to irritate them. So as much as we can, think about keeping your twerk in your lower body, unless you're going for a very deliberate twerk, and then you're not going to want to do it super fast and super big at the same time, especially where you're just starting out. That can cause a spasm, and we want to avoid that whenever possible. So if you are going to do a full back hop, you're just going to be really gentle and then really curl forward. It's not super sexy, although it is, you know, again, it's just a flexion and extension. So if you want to get a little more into pumping your flexion and extension, you can play with that. But again, don't do it too much at first, and really be cautious of how it's affecting you. But that being said, we can really focus on activating our heart chakra, as well as our heart organ and our heart meridians. And our heart is our empress in our body. Our heart is where our spirit lives. It is our palace. So if The womb is our temple where we keep our feminine essence. Our heart is like the ruler of our body. And so we really want to be able to have our heart be healthy and able to contract and release fully as much as possible. When it does that, it pumps blood throughout our body. So if we tend to have poor circulation, cold hands and feet, things like that, we definitely want to focus on opening our heart and pulsing contraction and release through it. The other thing that's really great about working with the chest is working with the diaphragm and the liver and spleen, which are just under the diaphragm here. So when we flex and extend, or pop and release our chest, we are pumping blood through the diaphragm, through the liver and the spleen. The liver is kind of our stress organ. So it helps process hormones and other toxins in our body. And when it's not getting a good blood flow, we can end up feeling more irritable than normal. Little things can set us off. So if you're feeling that, just know that working on your chest popping, as well as those upper oblique contractions that we talked about, particularly on the right side, that's the liver side, can be really beneficial for supporting it. On the left side, we have the spleen. It doesn't tend to get quite as irritable as the liver, but if you do have a lot of left-sided issues or you're just not digesting food well, it can be great to focus on the left side, although you definitely want to balance them out. Again, if you have one side that tends to be more spasmic or contracted than the other, you can focus a little extra on releasing that side or pumping through, but try and keep them mostly balanced. Yeah, so we're going to move up to the chest, and what that's going to look like is a lift. So as we lift, we're lightly engaging our upper back, as well as elongating and contracting our upper belly muscles. And then we release and let them go. So contract and release. Okay, and that's just for the lift. We're lifting and then going back to neutral. We're not arching huge and we're not rounding forward yet. Just popping up and lifting back to neutral. Keeping your low back out of it as much as possible. You can put your hands on it to be sure if you like. Remembering to keep breathing. You don't need to follow any specific breathing pattern right now. There are ways that we can layer it, but for now, let's just focus on getting comfortable with that movement. We can also pop down and back up. So with this one, we're contracting and shortening those upper belly muscles. Lower belly muscles can just stay lightly engaged for support. Same with the low back. And then the upper back is relaxed as we contract and shorten the upper belly and then let it go back to normal. So this is a great exercise for strengthening the upper abs, reminding them how to contract and release. They're more of a stabilizers for a pelvis, so they're not going to be a direct support for our pleasure centers in our pelvis, but getting the area around this upper body or mid body released of tension can be really beneficial for the nerves that flow through it, which do go down to the pelvis. So it's indirectly supporting our pelvic pleasure. The other thing is that when we get into advanced levels of orgasmic work, awakening our heart and connecting them to the womb and the pelvis is really powerful because they are polarity centers of opposites that when they are connected create a strong loop of energy that that can just support our deep core strength. And we can learn how to connect that even to that greater vortex or toroid that I was talking about earlier, which can release blockages more quickly and help to create more pleasure. So let's go into the full arch and drop. So contract, lengthening the upper belly and the back just a tiny bit. We're not drawing the shoulder blades strongly together. It's just a little light contraction. And then release, shortening it with a contraction. Okay, we can go do both, moving through that. Again, it's not the most beautiful movement, but doing a little pop here and there, or doing, we tend to use that more when we do slower, more sensual movements, and we will go into that more in lap dance. But for now, just practicing that can help to really open the heart and make things nice and strong. We can also integrate the two. So if we do a back tilt and a chest tilt, we can kind of get into this place where we can jiggle in there, and it can just help break things up. That looks interesting. If you're having a hard time with this, if you do have chronic low back pain, one thing you can do is utilize a counter or a desk, anything that's waist height to chest height, and rest your upper body on it. And that will take a lot of pressure off of your hips. And from there, you can practice contracting and releasing the low back muscles and the belly muscles, either together, one after the other, or separately. So that can be a great way to train. You can do it laying down as well. But I find that taking the gravity out of it can make it a little easier to play with the movements. You can also do your hip slides side to side and practice your shakes, otherwise known as a shimmy. There's lots of things you can do in that supported position as well. Let me just make sure that I talked about everything I wanted to talk about. I think we did, yeah. So we're just really gently starting to waken up the nervous system throughout the back and the belly. We are gently strengthening muscles and training them to contract and release in a really gentle but powerful way. And we're doing this not only because it's fun and looks cool, but we are doing it to really support our core strength and our superficial strength as well, because they're both important. And it's going to help us get nice and toned so that we can look good while we feel strong. Doesn't mean that we need to get rid of all of our belly. It doesn't mean that we need to get rid of our booty. We can use it to our advantage. So if you do have a nice booty, you'll get a really nice shake. We get a really nice twerk. So let's go into a typical twerk stance, right? So we're bent forward, hands here, and this is where leaning on a desk or counter can be really good training. If you do feel strong enough though to go into a squat, I recommend making sure that you can squat with your hands on your thighs for 20-30 seconds at a time. And you're just going to practice that flexion and release, contraction and release. And you can see if you can start going faster. If you can't, if all you can do is stay small and slow, that's totally fine. If you want to get a little more of a jiggle, you can do side to side, or you can bounce. So bouncing while you contract and release. Really get a nice solid jiggle. You can also do a really strong pop. So that's more of a belly dance move, but it can be a really fun way to transition between different things. So we're down here twerking, and then we come up and we pop. Especially when we're doing lap dance, it can be a fun way to draw attention to our luscious booties. We can even get up, in our partner's face and give them a little pop. So just play around with all of that. See what works for you. Let me know. I'm happy to clarify. And I will be doing more of these beginner level classes, as well as some kind of next level classes coming up pretty soon. And then I'm always incorporating some twerking into my goddess flow classes because I think it's a really important exercise to do regularly, this waking up of the pelvis. In addition, if you want to get a lot of pelvic floor control, be able to really contract and release strongly, I definitely recommend checking out my Pussy Dance program, which are I call them ecstatic Kegels, and so, or Kegels on ecstasy. And these are internal movements, kind of internal twerking, where we are contracting the muscles in our pelvic floor and releasing, or we're moving them in spirals, or we are writing with them on our belly, or gripping as we move around all of the walls. So lots of different exercises. And in Pussy Dance, we have it be very playful, so that we don't get bored with it, so that we want to incorporate it into our day as much as possible. And again, those are things that you can do while you're cooking or cleaning or working, even sitting at a desk. So definitely check in for that. Thank you so much for coming to Twerk4Health. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want more of this kind of thing. And if you're staying for Lap Dance for Lovers, I'm just going to close out here so I can stop the recording, and I'll start back up again in about 5 minutes. All right.